Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 24th chapter. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. Oh, but we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." Then Jesus said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Weren't our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord. I wonder, do you find yourself more often having more questions in your mouth than answers? And maybe you're a philosopher and don't know. Philosophers are folks called to ask the best questions so that people have the best chance to look where mysteries are hidden. One philosopher worked with 3 questions that have shaped our culture's thinking for about 300 years. Immanuel Kant gave us these questions. The first one, what can I know? In a midnight time of misinformation and lies, even from some leaders, this is an important question for us today. The second question, what ought I to be doing? We hear this question in the reading from the book of Acts today, where the people asked Peter, "What shall we do?" And then the third question, What may I hope? Hold on. There it is. The question we come here with today and most every Sunday. What may I hope? When we live with the voice of today's psalm writer in 116, when those words crawl out of our throats, the pains of death surround us, and I have found trouble and sorrow. Well, reality smacks us right front and center. That very question, what may I hope? This is what can keep us up at night and meet us again in the morning. What may I hope? It's like walking away from Jerusalem after we just witnessed Jesus nailed to wood, bleeding, suffering, and breathing his last. After that, what may I hope? It's like hearing women all excited reporting that Jesus is alive, raised from the dead, and then hearing other disciples dismiss them, saying their words were an idle tale. After that, what may I hope? Well, not much, I guess. I mean, we say we had hoped. We had our hopes up, with Jesus teaching us that God's love would never disappear. We had hope that Jesus would be ready to change everything. Our terrible oppression by these Roman soldiers were always ordering us around. We had hoped that Jesus was at long last God's promised one, the one Isaiah foresaw, a Prince of Peace, a mighty king on the throne of Israel once again. Oh, how we had wanted our country back, how we yearned to be proud of our rulers again and live in peace. We had hoped that Jesus, this very Jesus, would march at Passover into Jerusalem, call all the Jews together, rally their fighting spirit, and start a revolt against Rome. We had hoped. None of that happened. His life was burnt out. Jesus' life dead and buried, and our hope hopeless now, snuffed out like a candle wick. If you've ever had your hopes crushed, you know how trouble and sorrow can pile on so that your hope no longer holds. That peak at Palm Sunday and the story of Jesus could build in our lives when life seems to be climbing and soaring and our hopes go to the roof and beyond. After all, Jesus' followers, the people who had spent daily journeys with him, saw the difference in him, realized what life with him could be like. Daily disciples came to trust his presence, came to experience not only his wisdom, as he taught them in parables and stories of dignity, how God blesses our life, but also they came to experience his mercy, his patience, helping their hope grow, because his grace and caring came through time after time. Jesus gave himself away to everyone he met. And even for these two who are walking on the road to Emmaus, even for these now hopeless disciples, the ones who lamented, standing very still, we had hoped. Now, even for these two, they had given up and walked away. But Jesus walks with them still, even though they don't recognize him, even though they don't catch on when he starts opening the living message from God in the Scriptures, even though their hope is so dead, they cannot imagine hoping again. Jesus doesn't. Jesus will not. Jesus cannot give up on them. Even as they invite this stranger to share their daily bread, they don't know they're about to witness resurrection. They have no clue that Jesus can raise their hope from the dead. They only recognize him when that beautiful, familiar word of blessing happens and the action of breaking bread happens, and then their midnight turns to dawn. In the moment of recognizing whose presence is with them, their hope is born anew. And they even look back and realize, didn't our hearts burn within us when Jesus helped us hear how God's message of hope has been playing all along, as if they had never heard what they had heard so many times before. And now they hear it in hope. Now they hear it as a gift. Now they hear it in the power of God's Spirit. And then they were going to be eating together, the first meal of the new resurrection. And just for that moment, that precious aha, when the hope Jesus holds for them had flickered back into life and light, just that moment was enough to stir their hope and turn them right around and send them back to Jerusalem, to the 11 who were still gathered together. And we know what happened. Those folks testified to a living hope, and the 2 who were going to Emmaus testified to their living hope and told the 11 how Jesus' presence had helped them hear in the Scriptures and helped them see in the shared meal that resurrection is their hope and it is real. They went from nope to hope by the power of the living Lord. You and I now, what may we hope? We are the beloved people of God. And when we get stuck, when we say those words, we had hoped, it's not a help to say, oh, everything will be all right. Jesus didn't say that. Not on the road to Jerusalem, and not on the road from Jerusalem. Jesus didn't pat them on the back and say, man up, you guys, you can handle this. Jesus did not offer weak little platitudes or flimsy advice facing such an hour when hope is dead. People sitting in darkness. What may people in small churches like ours hope? Is it enough to hear, well, just hang in there, everything will be okay? That doesn't get it. Hope has to be grounded. Hope has to be hope because there's a brighter dawn than that. The question comes, what may we hope? God plants the roots of hope down deep in good soil, where life grows and comes back again, no matter how tough the winter has been, how dark the midnight may be. God plants the roots of hope deep in the graves that God will open, in the empty tombs where the power and sting of death has no victory, where life, death, and resurrection show us Jesus changes everything. Our hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.